Duke Rodriguez, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
My first question is about your experience. You've worked in state government, in the private sector, in healthcare, and now in cannabis. Thinking back on your career, what is one lesson from those experiences that shapes how you would govern New Mexico differently from the current administration?
Oh, I think the big difference is I've got experience. I'm not a politician, I'm a businessman. I've clearly run hospitals, built group practices. Heck, I was a cabinet secretary under Gary Johnson. I reformed Medicaid. So you have most politicians who go into this role with expertise in campaigning, in kind of doing 1-second sound bites, and I don't think I'm good at that. What I'm really, really good at is fixing problems.
You and your Republican opponents agree on a lot of things, sort of broadly on crime, education, healthcare, economic growth. Can you pinpoint one important issue where you disagree with them and tell us what that says about your approach to governing?
I honestly don't think we agree on much. You will hear sound bites like, we should increase access, or we should shrink the size of this or that, or we should cut taxes. But what I think that makes the big difference is I've done these things. I don't think any of them can tell you how many Medicaid recipients we have, how much it costs the state. I don't think they could tell you what the split between the federal dollars and the state dollars are in the SNAP program. I know those things because that's what I grew up with. And not as being a cabinet secretary, as being a provider of healthcare services, as being an individual recipient of food stamps, or living in the housing projects in Alamogordo. I think that makes me different. I don't think we're much alike at all. I am not your blue blazer country club Republican, but I've lived the New Mexico experience.
So how would your approach as governor be different?
It would be very decisive. It would be recognizing where our priorities are. I've said this state has gotten very good at spending. I don't think we've gotten very good at investing. And so our budgets grow. We have very little accountability, and I'm more based upon, what do the numbers really say? How can we benefit the most number of people? We've got plenty of resources. Everywhere I go, I tell people, New Mexico is not a poor state. We are absolutely a poorly run state. My vision is to fix that second half and be a well-run state where New Mexicans can not only be proud, but benefit from the largesse that is New Mexico.
I want to talk to you about immigration. Your grandparents immigrated from Mexico. Your parents were migrant laborers. And you've said you support stronger border security, but you disagree with President Trump's mass deportation agenda. You've even suggested a modern bracero program.
That's correct.
In today's Republican Party, how do you balance border enforcement with the reality that many industries in this country depend on immigrant labor?
I'm a New Mexican who knows that our priorities should be first to the needs and the people of New Mexico. It is hard for any New Mexican from any city, town, or village in New Mexico to deny the cultural significance, the tie we have to Mexico, the fact that we need workers, whether you're an oil worker in southeastern New Mexico or involved in our green chili. We need to have able-bodied workers in the U.S. We all agree on the concepts of protecting our borders. We don't want fentanyl. We don't want criminals in our country. But I still believe we are compassionate people that want to do what is right. And so if you look at it, I don't think it's that hard to balance. I just think the difficult part, which is what we need, is not an attitude of saying, I'm fierce, I'm going to stop the White House, I'm going to be a brick wall. That's the absolute wrong attitude. We need to say, okay, I lived this experience. Before you all on the East Coast decide what's right for New Mexico, let us tell you how we are, why we need, and what we do.
On the economy, you've proposed eliminating major state taxes while also proposing major investments in healthcare access, public safety, economic development. But those taxes fund a large part of the state budget. What would you cut, replace, or restructure in order to bring your programs to fruition?
Well, first, to understand the context, what I've advocated for is eliminate personal state income tax. That's not that novel. It's happening like that now in Nevada. It's like that in Texas. It's in 9 states. And it's particularly more common in states who have significant mineral oil and gas. We're one of those states. I've also suggested removing completely New Mexico gross receipts tax on retail sales. Most of your listeners realize we've already removed it on groceries. We're just making that extra step. And then the last thing is to reduce the state's portion on property tax. Now, the immediate conclusion is, what are you going to cut? That kind of fear comes from a culture where we think that everything's about spending. It's not. It's about prioritizing, putting money in the right program, and making sure we get the maximum value from those investments, which we don't do now. People will say, well, how do you feel about SNAP? Are you going to cut SNAP? First of all, SNAP is a federal program that comes primarily from the feds, and the state's primary role is administration. But it has a 15% error rate. We're likely to have that money cut back if we don't control it in the right way of eliminating errors. I would actually like to increase the food allocation because $6 a day is not enough. Now, I could talk about Medicaid forever and tell you that's bigger in total of total services in our education budget. It's $11.5 billion. Keeps going up, members keep going down. And yet, our quality of life is not getting better. So I can pretty much convince you that we're not getting the results that we need from the money we put out.
You often frame your economic goals in terms of private sector growth and entrepreneurship. But New Mexico has one of the largest public sectors relative to its economy. Why do you believe that private sector-led growth would work here when previous governors have struggled to diversify this economy?
Previous governors have been lawyers, have been politicians, lifetime politicians. I don't think we've had a business-oriented governor since Gary Johnson. I don't think most candidates, name any one of them, the DA or the activists or you name them, I don't think any of them could tell you what our four major industries might be. For example, oil and gas. We should all know that that's a major sector. How about agriculture? That's a sector, actually, as a young person, I worked in the fields. I'm very familiar with the importance of agriculture, and yet we don't capitalize it. How about healthcare? Healthcare is a big thing. I ran Loveless for many years. I was the human services director or a secretary. Think about healthcare. Largest employer in the state with 150,000 jobs, yet we don't invest in it enough. We have two large healthcare systems here in Albuquerque alone, which are failing tremendously, huge losses, which we could talk about. But the last thing being national security. Think about that. Los Alamos Labs, Sandia Labs, White Sands Missile Range, Holloman Air Force, you name it, Cannon Air Force Base. We're always going after that unicorn, and we think it's called Facebook or Project Jupiter. We have the major sectors we could invest in, not spend, invest in, and get tremendous job growth.
Well, I want to stick with healthcare for a second.
Please.
In much of rural New Mexico, healthcare survives because of Medicaid and public funding, especially rural communities. But residents depend on private hospitals and private facilities. If the private market can't make money delivering healthcare in Silver City or Vegas, they just shut down and they leave. What responsibility does the state have to step in where the private market fails?
I think the state for decades has failed healthcare tremendously, and not just the rural setting, the urban setting. Most of your listeners may not know it. For the last 3 years, Presbyterian's health system has lost over $1 billion. UNMH, we're very proud of UNMH and its quality medicine. It's lost $500 million. Either way, their losses are accelerating. So the rural system is important. The urban part is important, but the fact is that they're both destabilized. As a governor, you would want to step in and say, I need this system intact. I need to make sure I give them the capital to invest in infrastructure. Last week I had a friend over at getting an MRI at Presbyterian. They had to wait 36 hours because they have 2 MRI units and one was down. That's unbelievable that's going on. Getting a specialist at UNMH now in dermatology, they put out a public notice, 18 months. So my role is to bring all the players back in together and say, hear me out. We are a healthcare state. Hear me out. I'm a healthcare governor, the first we've ever had in the history of New Mexico. This is one of our largest priorities. Lower time to get an appointment, increase investment in these facilities, making sure that there's less fraud and waste, and making sure that we deliver more medicine to more patients.
All right, from healthcare to childcare. You have talked about the importance of work and self-sufficiency, not being dependent on government aid. You've sued Governor Lujan Grisham over the state's universal child care program. But you've also talked here today about how your family benefited from public assistance when you were young. Supporters say without universal child care, they can't afford they can't work. In your view, where is the line between helping families get up on their feet and creating a culture of dependency?
When you talk about universal child care, I believe in child care assistance. I also believe in doing it lawfully and doing it right. And I also believe about being transparent. Most of your listeners would be shocked if I told them the current version of what was crafted unlawfully, announced prior to the legislature even meeting or funding it, which will get overruled by the Supreme Court and set aside. That's a strike on the governor, not on the program. It has to be done lawful, which means we have to have public input, which means we have to have feasibility studies, which means we have to know how much it costs. Right now, I would tell you, what is designed today, irrationally, irresponsibly, and unlawfully, is going to cost more from the state budget than what we from the state budget provide SNAP, food stamps, and Medicaid combined. And that should scare everyone. That's just plain old irresponsible.
Many Republicans face crime in terms of enforcement. Weak laws, not enough cops on the street, liberal judges creating a revolving door. But you often talk about poverty, addiction, mental health, and education failures as a source of crime. The overall crime numbers are going down in the state, but what would you do in your first year in office to make regular New Mexicans feel safer?
If New Mexicans are going to feel safer, I don't think it's going to come from spouting statistics. I don't think that's making anybody believe it. If you ask the average New Mexican or anybody driving up and down Central, do they think that there's less crime? The answer is no. They generally have rationalized that people just might not be reporting it. The only way they will feel safer if they see their streets cleaner, if they see less loitering, if they see less encampments. They will feel safer if they feel vibrancy in our economy, that our young people have jobs to look forward to. It's not enough to say it. If they realize their kids are staying here, they will feel safer. They will begin once again to believe that we are putting things into place to bring down, as you discussed, and I will say it over again, crime in a silo is not enough. It won't fix anything. Throwing more money at law enforcement, great. Raising their pay, great. Recruit more patrol police officers, wonderful. But it won't fix it. We have to realize it's not a single activity. It's the combination as you described. If we don't deal with the poverty by having more jobs, we're going to have problems. If we don't have places within our education system that benefit our students, if they don't feel energized, if they don't feel engaged, if they don't have PE or art or whatever, they're not going to feel hopeful, and they're just going to basically rebel and hurt our teachers. If they don't deal with mental health and addiction when people are in crisis, it all will aggregate back as crime. Stop dealing with them individually. Stop throwing at behavioral health money this year, and next season it's a new juvenile justice bill. You have to realize, we have to finally realize that it comes to the core of doing things better.
Now, you mentioned juvenile crime, and I want to ask you, do you think our problem is that juvenile offenders are not punished enough, or that we're not intervening early enough to prevent the problem?
I think our problem with juvenile justice cannot be picked as one single problem and issue, and this is it, and this will fix it all for everyone. It's not true. I sat on the juvenile parole board, and I was the person that they brought me stacks of documents, 40 files thick, and they said, by the way, we're going to review, and I met each of those young people, and I saw them, and some sounded more remorseful than others, and I really thought our role was to help guide them to their next step. I learned very quickly our job was solely to get 40 of them approved for parole so 40 more vacant beds could be made up. Kids know that it doesn't work. We don't hold them accountable, but we also don't give them an environment to prosper.
Let me ask you about infrastructure and the environment. You've talked a lot about desalination and brackish water projects. They can be expensive, energy intensive, and a little bit controversial. How do they fit into your broader vision for New Mexico's water needs, growing energy demands, and environmental stewardship?
You know, I hear that, Duke, you're just another Republican. I'm not another Republican or another Democrat. I think that the globalness of these individuals is very limited. I don't think it's enough to be the mayor of a small town. I don't think it's enough to be a PR spinster. It takes a little greater vision. I spent a lot of time in Israel. I was impressed with probably the only country in that area that produces more water than it consumes. Big investors in desalination. I believe in also creating more power, not being afraid of bringing enterprise here and say, oh, they're going to take all our water, they're going to take all our power. I think, and by the way, I don't think desal is very expensive. Each desal facility can be built for about $200 million, 18 months from from permitting to finished construction. Right now, we are probably 5 desal clinics, desal facilities behind where we should be. El Paso just built the second largest desal facility in the country. We don't have one. I think Texas has got 12. We should produce adequate water. We should produce adequate electric. We have the resources, we just don't have the ability to execute. No more vanity projects, no more rail runner, but actually invest in projects that make life better, not bitter.
Your support appears to be flagging a little bit. You were second in the Emerson poll just a couple of weeks ago and a distant third in the Sanderoff survey we saw the Journal published over the weekend. You've had a few controversies during the campaign, including over your residency. Do you think that's hurting you among voters?
Not at all. I think every poll is a snapshot in time. And if you look at it, I think Brian Sanderoff said it best, and that's because he said very little. What he said, and Brian is someone I trust wholly. I can argue with what he's got in his polling and what he doesn't. One of the candidates had their TV ads up the week before. That gives you a bump. The real story, what Brian said was the race is up for grabs. We've had a poll at 65% undecided, Emerson had it at 60, and Brian's at 40. It's all a matter of picture of time. You cannot tell me or convince me that less than 400 people will represent the 150,000 that will represent and vote in this primary election. This is the first time in New Mexico's history we have the independents declined to state to vote. Our polling shows where we are. I'm okay.
Why do you think we have so many undecided Republican voters? Is it Trump?
No, I think it's because generally speaking, the candidates have not fully introduced themselves, and generally speaking, I'd like to believe that the candidates suck. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. I don't think the Democrats are that great and the Republicans aren't overly impressive, including myself. But the reality is, we're now introducing ourselves. The day his poll came out is the day we began our TV ads. They're persuasive, they're willing to listen, and our polls are indicating we're okay. So why are they unengaged now? Is because we've done a poor job. Let's see what we do in the next 4 weeks, and let's see what happens on June 2nd.
So today you've talked about New Mexico's problems as interconnected: crime, healthcare, education, addiction, economic stagnation. If you could make meaningful progress on only one of those things during your first term, which one do you think would have the biggest impact on the overall picture?
I think polls have indicated, and I agree, the number one issue in this state right now is healthcare. If people don't improve their life, if they can't see their doctor, if their hospitals don't stay open, if their entire communities are destroyed. Just this week alone, I understand in Los Alamos, they shut down their labor and delivery. Births will now be done in Espanola and Santa Fe. That's not good. We can deal with crime. We can deal with the failing education system. We can deal with building the economy up. But the one area that we can have impact is in health. And never in New Mexico's history have we ever had a healthcare governor. This Governor Day will go down in history where Susanna gets blamed for mental health, destroying the behavioral health network. This governor will be recognized for destroying healthcare in New Mexico. And if I'm elected, I will be that healthcare governor who not only deals with improving our healthcare system statewide, but then will also deal with all the other issues that stem from that failure.
Duke Rodriguez, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.